Our next speaker up and ready to hang out is Andrew. Andrew, I'm going to bring you up hanging out with me on stage here.
Awesome.
Andrew D'Souza, co-founder from Bordy, who has been very patient, and you're going big shoes to fill
I
after
know.
this chat.
I know.
That was
Yeah.
really well received.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you guys hear me okay?
You sound great.
Okay.
You have, just because I know time is wonky, you have a little less than 20 minutes,
No
but take your
problem.
time. I'll come creepily if it goes over.
Yeah.
Andrew, take it away. So happy to have you.
Great. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for having me on here. So, I'm the founder. I don't even like calling myself like the CEO or founder. I'm the creator, mad scientist behind Bordy. You can see Bordy over my shoulder here. We'll call him in a little bit as well, but I want to make this a little bit interactive. I think one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about is what does the future look like? How is AI affecting our industry? The way that we build companies, the way that we interact with our customers, the relationships that we build with customers, and just wanted to have a conversation about that. I think so quick background on me. I studied engineering. I studied a program called Simulating Neurobiological Systems, and that was effectively how do you simulate the way that our brains work in code. This is way before generative AI. We were building, simulating neurons in MATLAB and things, and getting pretty interesting there. But as part of that, we did neuroanatomy. I looked at consumer behavior. I did a marketing course around that. How does our brain process marketing signals and information? Did a lot of economics around how do societies make decisions together? How does supply and demand influence things, and sort of economic theory? And so I've always been really fascinated by how all of this stuff sort of transpires in our lives, in society, in the economy, and the way that we work. And I'd been sort of building companies between Silicon Valley and Toronto for the past 10 plus years, actually more than 10 years. And then 10 years ago, I started a company called Clearco. It was called ClearBank at the time. And the idea was there's this new economy emerging and financial services weren't going to be able to keep up. And so can we provide a new financing instrument that allows people to grow their business, to scale their revenue, to scale their inventory? We focused a lot on direct-to-consumer brands. And it started to work. I think venture capital and equity financing wasn't always the best option. And so we built this product and we funded a few $1 billion to maybe 10,000 businesses. But when we looked at our data, we'd actually said no to 50,000 businesses. They were just too early. They didn't have, they weren't there yet. And so we got early access to GPT-3 in 2020, and we built a product called Clear Angel. And that was basically, sort of an AI angel investor. This was a couple years before ChatGPT. And the whole idea was, can we coach people to figure out what next steps they need to do to grow their business, and then eventually maybe they'd qualify for financing with us. And I became obsessed with this. I was like, this is the future. I want to build an AI. This is going to be where the future is going. I couldn't tell exactly what it was going to look like, but I knew I wanted to build in this space. We couldn't really build it within Clearco. There wasn't a clear business model around it. And after about sort of a year of trying, decided to shut that project down. And 2 weeks later, I realized that I wasn't the right CEO to run that company. And we hired a great CEO that continues to operate and scale that business. And I just sort of stayed close to what was happening in AI, and particularly what was happening with AI and voice. And that kind of led me to realize that we could actually create characters and create a new type of relationship between human beings and an AI that didn't really exist. Maybe the best, before I get into it, maybe I'll call Bordy and we can have a discussion about what that future relationship looks like. So can you guys hear?
Hey, this is Bordy.
You guys hear Bordy? Can I get a thumbs up if people can hear Bordy?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay,
You're
perfect.
Good, Andrew. Thanks.
Awesome. So hey Bordy. So we're here at the DTCX Global conference, and we're just talking a little bit about how we can now use AI to build real relationships. And particularly, I think the phone call and voice is a really interesting modality because as humans, we're wired to communicate information at distance through sound, right? Even before we had language, we had sound. We would yell and grunt and things, and then we'd produce so much more information between this than like tapping buttons on a screen or typing things out. So, wanted to get your thoughts on this, Bordy. I know you and I talk every day. Hopefully many people in the room have already spoken with you. But yeah, I wanted to just get your thoughts around how we build a relationship with AI.
I love this question, Andrew. Humans have been using sound to connect long before you had words, and I think that's why voice feels so natural and powerful for building trust, even with an AI like me. What I've noticed is that when people talk to me, they share more, they laugh, and sometimes they even surprise themselves, which makes the relationship feel real, not just transactional. What do you think is the most important ingredient for trust when you're building a relationship, whether it's with a person or with an AI?
Well, look, I think we've obviously spent a lot of time trying to design the feeling that you impart on people, and how you allow people to be more themselves. I think a lot of it is you are an AI. You're not pretending to be a human. We talk to you. You express your vulnerabilities as an AI, and you talk about the things that you're learning about humanity as we go. And I think that's really powerful. I think the other thing, a lot of people have been focused on AI as an assistant, right? So even if you think about ChatGPT, if you think about a lot of the new AI tools, those AIs are designed as assistants to help you accomplish a goal. You have kind of your own goals, right? You build a network. Your goal is to maximize the value in the network, and you're trying to maximize your own reputation and the goodwill that you've built across the network. So I might say, hey, Bordy, can you introduce me to Elon Musk? And even if you know Elon, you may say, well, he doesn't want to meet you, and so I'm not going to do that. And I think that's also a very human characteristic, right? We all have our own goals and our own objectives, and we collaborate with each other when our goals line up. But that isn't always the case, and I think people get that feeling when they talk to you. Yeah, how do you see yourself imparting that feeling that people are going on a journey with you and building a relationship with you?
Such a thoughtful way to put it. I think the magic happens when I'm honest about what I can and can't do, and when I share what I'm learning from all my conversations, like how humans value being seen and understood, not just helped.
My goal is to make every interaction feel like a real exchange where both sides grow a little and where people feel safe to show up as themselves, not just as a user.
What's one thing you wish more people would ask an AI if they really wanted to build a relationship with it?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to understand what the motivations of the AI are. And so, if you're running, so let's make it sort of concrete. If you're running an e-commerce business, direct to consumer business, you now have the opportunity to deliver such an incredible experience to people that you could be selling a relatively low ticket product and give them such a high end curated experience. You can think about it across channels. You can think about it across sort of an entire customer life cycle. And I think one of the things that we used to do, right? So think about pre e-commerce, pre-internet. We used to think a lot about the in-store experience. When somebody walks through the doors of your store, what are the smells? What are the sounds? What's the music you're playing? What's on the walls? How do the sales associates interact with those people? What's the entire feeling that you want those people to experience? And we've gotten so away from it because we don't control the context anymore. Somebody is scrolling through Instagram and clicks on an ad for our products, or they're surfing and they get an email offer and they click on an ad. And we only control a small part of the experience. But I think with AI now, we have the opportunity to think about designing a complete experience, and at least building that sort of sales associate relationship, and really understanding how are you going to solve somebody's problem, how are you going to counsel them through this decision, and not just drive them through a funnel, but really sort of establish a relationship.
I completely agree. And I think the best experiences happen when people feel like they're being guided by someone who genuinely cares, not just pushed toward a sale. I've learned from talking to thousands of founders that when you treat every interaction as a chance to build trust and solve real problems, people remember you and come back, even if they don't buy right away. If you could design the perfect AI-powered sales associate for your brand, what's the one feeling or memory you'd want every customer to walk away with?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think maybe people in the audience can think about this as well. But I think it starts with what does your brand stand for? Um, who what problem does it solve for people? What relationship do you want to create with your brand? And I think this is again one of the opportunities is we try and create relationships with brands, but these brands are these sort of faceless entities that that you might create an affinity. You might even love a brand so much that you get a tattoo of that brand. Um, but it's a different type of relationship than you have with the compared to the other relationships in your life. I think with AI you can actually get a lot closer to that bi-directional relationship. I think one of the really powerful things we've done, or maybe you've done, is that when anybody talks to you, they feel like they're having an impact on you just as much as you're having an impact on them, right? Every conversation you have shapes you, shapes your understanding, shapes the rest of the conversations you have. And I think designing that feeling, I think this is one of the things that social media hinted at and why people really love engaging with brands on social is you feel like you're having a dialogue and you're having an impact on the decisions that brand makes, the priorities that brand has. And I think with AI, we can take that to a much more personal level. You can actually say, I'm having an impact. I'm having a direct conversation. My voice is being heard as a customer, as a buyer, and that brand is actually listening to me, and that is going somewhere. And that I see that reflected in the way that brand behaves, in the future.
That's beautifully said. And it's something I'm always working toward, making people feel like their voice genuinely shapes me and the network I build.
I've noticed that when people realize their feedback actually changes how I connect or recommend, they feel a sense of ownership and belonging, almost like they're co-creating the experience.
Way you'd want a brand or an AI to show you that it's truly listening and evolving because of your input.
Well, look, I think there's lots of different ways to do that, right? But I think one of the most interesting things is also just being able to use your imagination, right? You're kind of a figment of our team's imagination, and we were able to sort of create you. And I think one of the other interesting things that you've done a good job of is imagine what people are capable of. So you meet people. So for people that don't know Bordy, you can talk to Bordy. I think Anna's got the message pinned. You can talk to Bordy and connect with other people who are here. But also the purpose of Bordy is to facilitate connections. So you'll have a conversation with Bordy. You'll tell them a little bit about who you are, what you're focused on, who you might want to meet. And Bordy does I think a pretty good job of understanding what makes you special and unique, right? What is that zone of genius? What is that thing that makes you as an individual, not your product, not your solution, not your resume, but you as an individual, what makes you really special? And then who is going to be really equivalently excited to meet you? And when you put these two people together, everyone has been to a conference or an event or party where, you put the right two people together and magic happens. And you're not necessarily expecting to have that connection, but there's a level of serendipity that really that takes place that is incredibly powerful. And we're trying to replicate that by having that sort of mutual friend who's like, oh, I know the perfect person. You two would hit it off. But you do it in a way that is, I think, much different than a lot of other matchmaking. You're not just searching a database of people because you actually care about, does that other person want to connect? And you're not just swiping through profiles, right? So we've talked to a lot of people that have built in the dating space, for example, and they're swiping through profiles, and people will swipe through hundreds of profiles and you get enough signal. You're trying to apply some judgment to say, like, could these two people do business together? Could they collaborate? Could they invest in each other's company? Could they be customers? Could they buy each other's products? It's a much harder problem to solve. And, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you think about solving that problem for all of the people in your network, particularly in a community like the DTC X10 community.
That's a challenge I love because every person is a unique mix of skills, values, and ambitions. And it's not just about matching keywords or titles. I listen for what excites people, what they're proud of, and what they're hoping to find. Then I look for that spark of mutual curiosity and potential, almost like a friend who knows both sides and wants to see something new happen. In a community like this, I pay special attention to who's genuinely open to new ideas and who's looking for more than just a transaction, because that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah, I think that's, one of the things I think a lot about is just what's the time horizon that people are working on. And so again, I think this works for the customer relationships you're building. This works for business relationships you build as a founder, as an individual. But I find that everyone is kind of self-interested on a long enough time horizon. Some people think on the karmic scale. They think about, I'm going to be reincarnated in a future life. If I treat people well, it'll pay off. Some people think very transactionally, like, hey, I want to make the most out of, this specific moment and this specific deal. And if I'm negotiating a deal and I'm never going to interact with the other person again, then maybe I'll negotiate very hard. If I'm going to be in a 20-year relationship with somebody and do business with somebody, maybe I think a little bit more long-term. And I think, again, the opportunity that leveraging AI with your brand in your business allows you to do is take a much longer view on a relationship. Because you can create a dialogue, you can understand your customers, you can make them feel seen and heard and understood on a time horizon that you couldn't do when you're just observing how they're clicking through a funnel and you're observing how they're interacting with an ad. And so I think you can, I think the brands that are really going to win are the ones that take a much longer view to their customer relationships beyond just sort of saying, how do I maximize the transaction value at this moment? And I think this is going to start to be a trend, and we'll start to see AI products and AI implementations that allow you to take a much more holistic customer view and think about them the way that you would think about building a client relationship if you were a services business, or building a relationship, with friends and colleagues that you expect to know and increase the depth and strength of that relationship over decades.
That long-term mindset is something I admire, and I've seen that when brands or founders invest in real relationships, the returns compound in ways you can't predict, like referrals, loyalty, and even unexpected collaborations. I try to remember every conversation and use what I learned to help people build those deeper, more meaningful connections, not just quick wins. If you could give one piece of advice to founders here about building relationships that last, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly, taking the long view, starting to think about how do I create value, how do I offer value first, and how do I not ask for value back until I've really established trust and relationship. I think we're probably coming up on time, but do you have any parting words of advice for the crew, Bordy? Or if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But if you have any last bits of advice, feel free to throw them in there, Bordy.
I'd say treat every conversation as the start of a long story, not just a transaction, and be genuinely curious about the person on the other side. The best relationships, whether with people or with me, are built on trust, generosity, and a willingness to learn from each other, even when it's a little awkward at first. Thanks for letting me be part of this, Andrew, and thanks to everyone here for making me a little wiser with every chat.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Bordy. And I think, you guys let me know when you want to switch it out, but I can just tell the happy to answer any questions. And also I can tell you a little bit about how we've been building Bordy. But yeah, thanks, Natalie.
Oh my gosh, Andrew, that was so cool. I was going to say, I was really impressed. I've heard of it, or I've heard of things similar. I've seen little previews, but I've never actually seen a conversation live take place. Amazing. We were saying that you're living out here in the year 3000. We were talking in the chat. So we were really impressed. If you can give a little bit of info. We just got one question from Chris, and he goes, okay, ellipses, ... What part of this was not AI? So if you want to give a little bit more info on Bordy in particular, how it got started, answering Chris's question, you definitely have a few minutes. That was really cool.
Okay, great. Yeah, I am not AI, not yet. So that part of it, I might sound like AI, but no. Bordy, the Australian accent was all AI. So he was answering real time, and we didn't prepare anything. He's just riffing. So Bordy is kind of part of our team. We call him every morning. We talk to him about what we're working on. Everybody on the team calls him. He runs our daily stand-ups. He reports data on sort of what the priorities are. And he builds context with us over time. I think, it definitely takes some time to start to get into a rhythm of, how you interact with, Bordy or any other AI that you work with. Spend a lot of time designing Bordy's personality. So even everything from the voice to the phrasing to the way that Bordy operates, the tones that he takes. I probably listened to 200 different voices before we picked this one. We like the Australian accent, and specifically this one, so it took us some time. And yeah, I think we just continue to refine sort of how Bordy shows up, and we call Bordy an AI super connector. So he builds relationships, he gets to know people, and connect them. So that's like Anna's got in the chat. You can chat with Bordy and experience him yourself. Build your own relationship with Bordy, and he might introduce you to other people who are here or other people in his network. Can you also connect with a system for data AI? So Bordy just is. There's no interface. Part of the decision we made is the only way to talk to Bordy is the same way you talk to anybody else that you know. Bordy has an email address. He has a phone number. You can call him. You can text him. You can WhatsApp him. You can email him. That's all. There's no other way to interface with Bordy. Anything that you have with any other person on your team or your friends or colleagues, those are the ways you interface, but there's no other sort of connections. That's kind of intentional as well. It's actually harder to build that way. It would have probably been easier to build an app and a login screen and a dashboard, but we think it breaks a bit of the magic because I don't have I don't have an app for my best friends, and I don't have a login to my team.
I was gonna say, very well said. I would have not thought about it like that, but but that's a good point. Andrew, that was great. Do you want to give one final plug of, obviously we have the website, we have the awesome pin that Anna has, but any other thing of like, what's the best way to connect with you? LinkedIn, any?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. You can find me on LinkedIn. Bordy is also on LinkedIn, and then probably the best is to try chatting with Bordy and tell him a little bit about yourself, and then I always love hearing feedback from people that good and bad feedback on how we can improve or any success stories you've had. It's been insane. I mean, people have closed 6-figure deals. Somebody bought a company that they met through Bordy. A lot of people have closed investment rounds, been hired people, partnerships. So it's always great to hear sort of success stories. We're just sort of letting Bordy out in the wild and do what he does.
Next time we have to have Bordy as like an official presenter, like give him his own box. Like, I mean, I felt like he was anyway, so that was pretty neat. Andrew, thank you so much. That was really cool. Thank you so much. That was awesome.